I love my job. I love it so much. You can probably tell from talking to me,
Yes.
I'm the kind of person that really likes learning new things and I'm just hopping around just every kind of place. And tech is just the most amazing playground for that. The job market is not as hot as it was a couple years ago or whatever, but anybody listening to this just know it's just a matter of time. Develop a process and refine it. I had an interview didn't go well, what didn't go well, and you just get more and more data on yourself, right? If you stick to the process, you'll get a job.
Welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, where we demystify what it takes to break into tech. I'm your host, James Hudnall, and my goal is to highlight real-life examples of people with non-traditional backgrounds moving into careers they love, so you can too. Hey everyone, today I'm joined by James Reagan, a software engineer at Accenture. Now, James previously served in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he also contracted as an archaeologist for almost half a decade. James, I'm getting the Indiana Jones vibes, and I can't wait to dig into your story. Welcome to Exponential Growth.
Hi, James. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really excited to dive in. And maybe to start, why don't you set the table for us? Tell us a little bit about what you do today.
Okay, so I am a software engineer at Accenture and work mainly in the government contracting space. I am currently in a full stack role, so I'm working on both front end and back end software applications.
Nice. And you landed this role in the current tough job economy, is that right?
Yeah, so I started full-time searching in 2022 and really started getting interviews around the time that the layoffs were starting to really crank up. So yeah, It was an interesting time period for sure.
I'm excited to dive into that and see what worked for you and what might be translatable to the audience. But before we go there, we always love digging into the story just to better understand the person. So why don't you take us way back? What was it like growing up? Where did you grow up? What did you do for fun?
Let's see. I was born in Chicago, and I kind of grew up between both Arkansas and North Carolina. And I've long since been interested in technology, like from an early age. So I started playing with computers at probably 12, 13 years old. And this is back in the early 90s when, back before JavaScript. And, so I was just playing with computers and really got interested in Unix machines and C programming, because that's, like I said, is before JavaScript, before Python, before all this.
Okay.
And so that's sort of my background. And I did lots of other things in life. I took many other turns, but I always thought I would possibly be a programmer for a profession, but it just took me, went on a roundabout to get there.
So you did have those thoughts early on, even if you didn't maybe start out that way post-college.
I did. I did lots of other things in life, but arrived to where I am now.
I interview people that have non-traditional backgrounds. I too claim a non-traditional background, and whether or not it's quote unquote traditional or not, James, I always find there's so much nuance and hidden layers in there that it's so fun to peel back and better understand anyway. And so jumping back to, I'm looking at your timeline on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. It looks like you did not study computer science initially in college. So I'm curious about the decision process.
Yeah.
You're in high school, about to go to college. Why did you study what you did?
When I graduated from high school, I did jump in and I started going to a community college right after high school. And I was studying, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I was really interested in Unix machines and thought I'd be maybe a systems administrator or something like that. So I was taking networking classes and electronics classes at the community college. And I kind of how I kind of got into archaeology is I needed a job, right? While I was going to the community college courses. And I saw a job at the community college. There was a job board and there was a data entry position available. And not knowing what it was, I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And it happened to be an archaeology lab for the state of North Carolina, right? So I applied the job, I got the job, and I started doing data entry, right? So, and slowly I was attached to the archaeology lab. I kind of was interested in what was going on there too. So I would, talk to the archaeologists there, and they're at the time they were cataloging 18th century wine bottles from Blackbeard's ship, Queen Anne's Revenge. Cool. And I was like, wow, it's just really cool. I like this stuff too. So I'm entering the artifacts from this collection into the databases, right? That was my job. But the archaeologists knew I was taking interest in it. I was kind of I wanted to know more. And they're like, hey, do you want to help out in the lab too? I was like, yeah, sure.
Nice.
And so I just kind of got into it that way and decided to switch my major. And yeah, from there, I would just probably worked for about a decade as an archaeologist, traveled all across the country. I was able to go overseas as well. I lived in Ireland for a year, did my master's over there, and
Nice.
worked over there as well. And it was a lot of fun. I got to see a lot of places in the world and see things from a different perspective. So I really appreciate that time period.
During that time, did you practice programming on the side as a hobby or anything like that?
Yeah, I had always, like, as my job responsibility like increased and I was doing more research-based things in graduate school, like I would use like my knowledge of databases and everything in maybe a little uncommon ways. Normally archaeologists would hire somebody to do some data crunching for them, but I would be able to do that myself, and I had an interest in that. And I was always really, in my approach to archaeology, I was a very data-driven person, and I enjoyed that aspect quite a lot. And so that sort of went hand in hand with, making my own databases and doing my own research with the data.
Talk about that year in Ireland. I'm curious because it may be loosely related. I spent a year in Sweden, and even though I wasn't programming there at the time, I feel like it gave me an interesting perspective. So I'm curious, what did you learn that year abroad?
Absolutely. I was able to go over there and study at National University of Ireland at Galway. And I had actually been there in Ireland for a year. I went to University College Cork in undergraduate as well, just like kind of sort of a year abroad thing. I was thinking of my junior year or something. I went abroad, and I liked it so much over there. Just the people, the culture, the language, the history, everything is just so, I had such a good time. I just wanted to come back. So I did it again with the master's degree. And I definitely, like I tried to delve, I took a couple of years of the language. So Gaeilge, the native language of Ireland. I tried to learn, obviously I was studying archaeology. So I studied history, medieval history. And I personally ended up specializing. I don't know how this happened, but I ended up studying like early monastic sites on islands, in southwestern peninsular County Kerry. So I got kind of niched down to that. I think somebody on my committee was my graduate committee was that her specialty was early medieval Ireland. So I kind of got into that way.
So you're just enjoying life at this point, and then you decided to come back because I think you said you wanted to come back, and I'm curious, do you still have contacts or relationships over there that you maintain today?
Yeah, absolutely. I have friends, and some of whom are still in the archaeology field and just doing great things, and some people went on to get their PhDs, and I have friends there. It's an amazing place. I can't wait to go back and visit.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way about my time in Sweden. I went over there, James, for a year, and those relationships are some of the closest I still have to this date. Actually, some of the people that I met were groomsmen in my wedding. They flew over and they were in the wedding party. So I totally understand, and I feel like, I don't want to say it's a shame, but I wish more people had exposure to other cultures like that, because I feel like it just provides an additional dimension that we otherwise can't really have. Yeah. Like it's one thing to study other cultures, but it's one thing to really immerse yourself in it for especially a year plus, like you did and I did as well.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
You come back, and I noticed the timing for you potentially getting out of archaeology and maybe deciding to serve was around the Great Recession. I'm not sure if that was correlated at all, but curious about that transition.
It was fairly correlated. I wanted to serve in the military, and so I went into the Marines at 28, which is like that's pretty much the cutoff for joining the Marines is 28 years old. And at the time I had wanted to be a reservist, to like continue my career as an archaeologist and go into the reserves. But this is at the time the Great Recession, and the contracting work I had done had dried up pretty hard. It was getting tough to stay employed. Even with the mobility that I had to be able to move around a lot, it was getting tough. So I thought, well, I was already in the pipeline for to be a reservist in the United States Marine Corps Reserves. I was like, why don't I just bump that over to active duty and see how the next 4 years goes, and maybe the economy will be better by the time I came out. And it was as well. So
Yeah. Do you want to maybe summarize your time in the Marine Corps? And you can either do that from the perspective of continuing to grow as an individual, maybe technical skills, maybe not, leadership principles, I'm sure.
Yeah. So we always say in the Marine Corps, somebody's always in charge. Even if you have two privates, there's somebody's in charge. So like it's basically whether you stay in for 4 years or 20 or 30 years in the Marines it's like a leadership course. So you definitely, it was awesome. I got to, have still to this day, it's my best friends in life from the Marines. And you definitely get put way outside your comfort zone in a lot of situations. And there's a lot of growth and something I'm really proud of. And yeah.
And then your time after that. Now, this is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say this is the most interesting thing I'm looking forward to, but I notice on your LinkedIn timeline,
Yeah.
you've got this gap year or
Right.
this gap period rather of almost 9 years. So I'm really curious to dive in here. What happened next post-military?
Yeah, so this is like 2014 when I got out. So there's a few things I would say about that. One is going back to like what I just said about when I lived in Ireland, I had this just awesome experience there where I was able to I felt like really connect with the people, the language, the culture, everything. And in the Marines, I was stationed in Hawaii. That was my last duty station. And which is where I live now. It's an awesome place to live. I love it here. But I felt like when I was, because of like deployments and movements, and you feel like, yeah, I'm stationed in Hawaii, but I don't feel like I really connected to the land and the people and the culture. I just didn't feel like I had that connection. So I was like, I kind of want to stay here a little longer to find out more about the culture, before I leave.
Sure.
So I started taking courses. So I had my GI Bill, and I was like, I just started taking. I went to University of Hawaii at Hilo. This is my local university, and I started taking courses on Hawaiian language. So I tried to repeat the process of what I did in Ireland. Basically, started taking courses on language and Hawaiian culture and Polynesian culture, and just to learn more. Like I said, it's paid for by the GI Bill, so it's free to me. So, and that's also where I happened to meet. In like 2015, I met my future wife in one of those classes. And she's from here. She's Hawaiian. She's born and raised here. She's a kumu hula, which is a hula teacher, right? So deeply involved in the cultural process. And anyway, we had dated and then ended up getting married in 2018. And so I'm here permanently to stay,
Yeah,
So,
you got roots.
Yeah. And then also the other thing is my decision to go back into college was I was pretty hurt at the time physically. Like there was days I could barely even get out of bed, I was in so much like back pain, I had knee pain, and just from the wear and tear of being in the Marine Corps infantry can be kind of tough on your body,
Got it.
And 2014 was a bit of a dark year for me in terms of like physical health and mental, and because of that mental health, I'm worried is archaeology is like a really physical job in most contexts. There's some like laboratory work and things like that, but a lot of times you're going out in the field and you're using your body, and it's like I was pretty worried about how I was going to support myself, and then you have the mental health aspect that comes with that, and it's like, okay, well this is different,
Yeah.
I can't. There was times I was like I said, couldn't get out of bed, and I have slowly, through working lots of physical therapy with the VA, and I have gotten better. There are days where I have, even today, where I have like setbacks, where get sudden setbacks. But overall, I'm in a lot better shape physically than I was in 2014.
Yeah.
And so going back to college for me, even after having done so much college, was like just a way to like give my body some rest, but also heal my mind too, and let my, because I was, like I said, going through a lot of, it was a dark time period for me.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. And
Yeah.
I think I hear you've got this almost insatiable curiosity, James. And I think that's so interesting. And to the extent you're comfortable, I am curious to maybe pull on the thread of how you overcame especially the mental component of that, because to your point, the physical, I guess, is more straightforward.
Yeah.
And, working with physical therapists kind of makes sense, but Are there anything, especially things that in hindsight maybe would translate either to the listeners out there or things that you even call on today that help you when you find yourself in a tough spot mentally?
Yeah. So I feel like for me, like I came really involved in Hawaiian culture in particular. I found a community basically. And like I said, my wife is a kumuhula, is a hula teacher. And so she opened her own halau or hula group right at the time. And I remember she had said to me, did you ever consider dancing like hula? And I was like, oh, and at first I kind of laughed because I'm not Sure. a dancer. I don't never consider myself a dancer or anything talented musically or dancing or anything like that. And but she said, if you study the language, you study the culture, as hula is like the heartbeat of the Hawaiian culture, and this is like something you should at least consider. And it's like, oh, I'm also opening halal, so you're welcome to, and so I did, and that has been a journey that has been so beneficial to me. Not only physically, I mean, because there's the dancing, I feel like it did heal, it did promote healing physically in conjunction with my physical therapy, but also like that sense of community, and like my hula sisters and my hula brothers and sisters are like everything to me. It's like a family, a community, and been able to partake in that. And we just recently got back from our second trip to Japan. And we get to travel and share this with other people. And it's just, it's been an amazing experience that finding a community was pivotal for me though.
Yeah, no doubt. And that translates so well to not just, trying to break into tech or anything like that. I think in general, being able to find community, whether in person preferably, or if not online, surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals to raise you up, as opposed to the sometimes, I guess, shallow interactions we could otherwise have, especially on social media platforms. I think that's so interesting. And so glad that you found that in Hawaii. And I also find it interesting because it sounds like you also pushed yourself out of your comfort zone, perhaps, to start the dancing. I know I'm trying to put myself in your place. I can't imagine doing that. It would definitely be a place of discomfort for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I see that you're going to start taking some computer courses, or maybe around this time, or maybe shortly thereafter.
Oh man, I don't know what happened. It's just like, going back to what I was saying, like when I was 12, 13, I'm back in those days, I'm just writing like trivial programs, and I had no concept of like doing this for a profession per se. Like I wanted to make my hobby fit my profession, if that makes sense. At the time, this is the like early days of like Linux. A friend at school had introduced me to Linux, and he's like, hey, you ever heard this thing called Linux? And handed me an early version of Slackware, I think, on a series of floppy disk, and that's kind of how I got started. And I'm just writing trivial programs in C, and just, doing that thing, something, that interest in all of Unix programming and tech and programming in general just got rekindled. And I thought, okay, well, how can I take this long-term interest of mine and make money doing it, have a profession? And, it turns out it's a fairly lucrative field.
It is. It's fun when your interests align with a field as lucrative as programming can be, to your point. So at this point, are you maybe pursuing a bachelor's degree?
Yeah. So, I think if I was just like taking courses just to take them, and with the idea that I might finish a bachelor's or might not, or it might, okay. I thought, well, I'm going to take enough so I can learn some of these formal concepts that I never bothered to, dive into when I was younger. So it started off like I was taking, your basic intro to programming CS courses, and I was also doing things that I had never really, I never really went that far into mathematics. I think I maybe did like pre-calc or something like that. And I thought, well, let's see how far I can push this, and I started taking some calculus classes, and then probability and statistics, and also took some physics classes. And this is all part of the major of the CS major. But yeah, like doing programming fundamentals, and we're writing mainly in C++ and Java. and doing things like data structures and algorithms and systems programming and looking at databases. And so I just started taking courses, and there's still a few more I want to take. I'm still interested in things like compilers and things like that, which I haven't got around to. But I see it more as a lifetime pursuit. And anything, those CS topics are like I see them as like you get long-term benefit from them, but you don't necessarily need them up front to get a job. So anybody listening to know like, oh, do I have to do this CS degree? It's like, you absolutely do not. Right. But there are things that will help you. They're concepts, whether you study them in a formal setting or not, they'll help you for your whole career. Yeah,
and I love that remark on algorithms and data structures is so timely for me personally, James. It's funny because even the boot camp that I did not finish, I was fortunate enough to actually land a role before I finished, which I have no regrets for that, save for the fact that I did not get to complete the data structures and algorithms section of said boot camp. So I don't know if you can see that book behind me. It's not just a trophy. I'm actually 60 pages in. I got that last week, and it is a 1,300. I guess I don't know if it's the canonical algorithms book. It's the best that I saw from the research that I did. And you're definitely not supposed to read it cover to cover, but to your point, and I've had this conversation with some senior engineers on my team at LinkedIn, I basically asked them, I said, I don't expect to read this cover to cover, but you're a staff engineer at LinkedIn. How has your understanding of data structures and algorithms helped you over the course of your career here? And they really paused and thought about that. And long story short, basically summarizing your own understanding of that is it's good to know. You're not going to use it initially, but especially as you grow into the SWE role and eventually senior SWE and beyond, the more you know and understand these key concepts, and more so knowing how to look up and reference what you need to know, the more that's going to help you going on. So I don't expect to read that cover to cover, but right now I'm riding the honeymoon phase momentum of getting into that. So that tangent aside, I want to go back to your story. So you're not maybe officially pursuing a bachelor's degree, or maybe you're on the fence, maybe not. How did this play out? I guess at that time where you did a job present itself?
Well, I had basically done that for a 2-year time span or so. I think I did 4 semesters total. So roughly like half the requirements for a major. And I just got to the point where I was like, okay, now I'm like, I guess at the time I would have been like 41 years old. And I was like, okay, let me go ahead and make this transition. Let me try to seal the deal here. And enough,
studying.
Yeah, enough studying. Let's try to make this transition. And then I'm of the mindset, and I still am, where, like I said, I'm working a full-time job now. I have no problem maybe taking a course here and there, because this is something I really enjoy. I actually, as you can tell, I enjoy like all different types of disciplines and subjects. I really love academic learning and being in a formal setting, especially having peers, and so I am looking forward to taking other courses. But it's important for me to have to go ahead and get started, I think.
Yeah.
So I made that decision in 2022. So, this whole time I was thinking, like, it was around 2019, I guess I started taking the CS courses. I was thinking, okay, as you know, my background now is like, I live in Hawaii, on Hawaii Island, actually a rural island here. There's almost zero tech sector here. I mean, there's maybe a few programming jobs, but it's very, very few, right? I thought, how can I do this? How can I be a software engineer and live here? Because I don't want to move. I like it here. My wife is born and raised here, and we have a house now, and it's like we're not moving. I don't want to move. So how can I live here and do that at the same time? And started really looking into, this is around 2019, this is pre-COVID, started looking into like remote work possibilities, which is already like a thing in software engineering at the time, pre-COVID. And then COVID happened, and even more, it's kind of like can't put the toothpaste back in the tube sort of thing, where a lot of places are RTO, returning to office. However, there is definitely more possibility for remote work than there was pre-COVID. So I realized that was going to probably increase my chances of being able to get my first job as fully remote. But I had another problem too. I was like, okay, so I think I can get this software engineer job in a remote role, but the other problem I had is I didn't know how to network. I was like, how do you do that? Like, I'm here in Hawaii and I don't have anybody in the tech industry. I don't know anything about that. I didn't have LinkedIn at the time. So I was like, okay, let me go. Well, I back up one notch. I read a book around the time, Ray Dalio's Principles. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I have.
Yeah, it was extremely influential to me at the time. And one of the take homes I got from it was his advice on seeking out the experts in a field. Everything you do is like you seek out the expert, and then you don't have to be an expert in anything. You just need to be able to find experts, right?
Yep.
So I thought, well, okay, well, who are the experts in web development? And so I found front-end masters, right? And I was like really intrigued by the fact that every different topic, they're like, who is the best person that could teach this topic? And it seems like they found some of the best instructors there. So I went on there and
can you just really quickly pause and maybe zoom out? What is front end masters? I'm actually not familiar with.
Yeah. Okay. So front end masters is like a teaching platform, sort of like Pluralsight, or so like front end masters has courses you subscribe to. It's a paid subscription thing, and then you can learn from some of the best minds in the industry. Like, however, they figured out how to get like the best people in for teach these courses, and so what I did is immediately I started watching those courses and learning from that. So because I have this some formal background, but I don't really have the immediate skills of web development. So the bulk of the jobs I realized was in web development, web applications development. So I was like, okay, that's be the best chances of me getting a job is probably starting there. And so on Front-End Masters, there was a course called Getting a Front-End Developer Job. It was like just a course called that. And I was like, wow, okay, there's the one I gotta check out. And it was the teacher is Jerome Hardaway. And he eventually became, long story short, he became my mentor. And he's my closest professional advisor this day. I meet with him every week. And I was awesome. When I reached out to him, as I made LinkedIn, just for the purposes of reaching out to people, I made a Twitter account as well to reach out to some of these people. And I reached out to Jerome, and we had a little bit of back and forth, and he offered to meet with me one-to-one and help me try to find a job. I should say he's the founder of an organization called Vets Who Code, right? And so he's an Air Force veteran. So I was like, hey, I thought to myself, going back to what I was saying about principles, it's like, this guy has put hundreds of veterans and their spouses into jobs, right? And he's sort of like the expert in this, among other things, right? He's an expert in putting people into jobs. Like I've got to try to see if I can get with this guy to learn what I can learn from him. And fortunately, it worked out for me. Not only to be able to have that one-to-one relationship with him, but the whole community of the Vets Who Code community. So still this day, I get to meet some of the best minds in the industry, get connections to them, and I have a forum. We have our own private Slack channel, so I can post technical or professional questions, whatever. And you have this whole body of really awesome people that are vastly more experienced than me that can help me. And so that community aspect is crucial. Yeah.
James, do you remember how you initially reached out to this person that you hold in such high esteem? Because I imagine the listeners out there are curious as well. Maybe they don't have the breadth of experience that you have in the previous bodies of work you've had. So what was your approach with that?
Yeah. So I actually asked him in a LinkedIn message. So I'm like brand new to the platform, and I just reached out to him hoping he would answer. And I'm also signed up for a coding bootcamp at this time. This is also through the VA. So using, the last bits of my benefits to go through this coding bootcamp, I was like, yeah, they're going to pay for it. And this sounds good. It's 3 months. This is like, I'm signing on to LinkedIn in January, and the bootcamp starts in April and graduates in July. So I was like, this I'm going to try. I'm determined to make this the year that I get the job,
And this is Hack Reactor, right?
This is Hack Reactor.
Okay, I want to come back to that because that program, I hear a lot of great things
we
about.
Can talk.
Please
we can talk.
Continue.
So I just reached out to him, and the question I asked, so I am signed up for this Hack Reactor, but I'm still months away from it. And I just
Sure.
asked him, because I know Vetsu Code has their own training pipeline. And if I would have known about Vetsu Code before, I might have gone just right through their pipeline completely. However, it worked out for me either way. And I had a good experience at Hack Reactor as well. But I asked them, I said, what do you think about coding boot camps?
That was your initial outreach?
Yeah, that was my initial outreach. And then we had kind of a back and forth on that. And, obviously at Vetsu Code, we're kind of partial to our own curriculum.
Sure.
But I remember he had told me at the time that the community aspect of that will be worth it much more than the technical part. Yeah. And I really like looking back now, I absolutely 100% agree with him, is that the technical part, at least for me, learning all these things is definitely non-trivial. I don't want to trivialize it, but it's such a thing that you can definitely do on your own.
Yeah.
At least for me, it's like, I can hack my way through docs and, experiment and play with things. And the technical side is fairly straightforward, what you have to do. And for me, it was just spending a lot of time practicing is what it came down to. Yeah. But the networking and the community side of things is something that you have to learn somewhere else,
I found that as well. The boot camp that I did Springboard, and I was going to do Hack Reactor, James, and it's interesting. Right. They had a scholarship opportunity. I think I did how to carve a pumpkin, basically the step-by-step. I thought I did a great job. Long story short, I did not get the scholarship. I was still going to go. I was going to pony up the money and do this. And it was around that time that I had, I guess I learned about Springboard. And because Colt Steele is, I guess, my version of the person that you met and hold in high regard, I had taken previous courses of his on Udemy. And I was like, wait, so he's like the async teacher in this asynchronous boot camp that I can do at my own pace. I can treat it like a full-time job. And if I can do it as fast as I think I can do it, I might be able to do it for, pennies on the dollar relative to Hack Reactor. I guess everything worked out. At the end of the day, I got the job that I wanted to get, but I really am interested in diving into Hack Reactor because I will say the pre-course work that I did, it was phenomenal. It was intense in a good way, and it was a challenge. So I would love to dive into your experience with that, maybe how you felt going in and how your experience stacked up to the expectations.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. And I got to, in my cohort, we're fully remote as well. I would have been open to the possibility actually of attending in person, like, it's only 12 weeks. I could have lived in San Francisco for 12 weeks or something. I would have been open to that, but because of COVID restrictions at the time, it was like closed. Right. So, but still, yeah, I met some really awesome people in my cohort and hope to meet those people in person here real soon. I still haven't had that opportunity yet, but some really awesome people, very smart people who went all sorts of different great outcomes, And it was like Jerome had told me, it was pure gold from a networking standpoint of view, because I was able to reach out to, I was like sending out connection requests, like about, because the maximum LinkedIn connection requests you're allowed per week is 100. And I was like on a schedule, like on Monday, I was like 100 connection requests. I'm going to reach out to all, Hack Reactor alum, or like, maybe this week I'll focus on other veterans, or on my LinkedIn, I've written about this before, is trying to find some kind of commonality, something that you have in common between you and someone else, and then just reaching out, and didn't have a specific ask or anything, just like to connect with you. That's basically it. And I was so amazed at how many people, like just on the sheer volume of requests I was making, there was a certain, like a small percentage, maybe like 1% or maybe even less than 1%, but because of the volume of requests that I'm doing, I was able to get like the certain kind of response. I kept noticing like, hey, yeah, glad to connect. And if you having questions, you want to chat sometime, let me know. And I was like, oh, I'll take you up on that, So, and some of these people were now senior engineers or recent. I tried to get a mix of both. Like I wanted to get more senior opinions. And I also want to get some people who are recently made the transition as well, to get a full picture of what I need to do. And of course, meeting with my mentor, I have the Vetsu Code network. I have all the resources at Hack Reactor. And then I'm meeting with these people. I try to do at least one a week, sometimes two a week. And after a while, after months, I had met with like dozens of people on Zoom. So I had figured out, circling back to what I was saying about having this problem of living in Hawaii, not on a rural island, I don't know how to do the networking thing. And so I found a way to make it work through LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
I would say you're an expert now, James. Please continue.
yeah. Well, looking back now too, I would have put, so anybody listening to this, you want to go beyond text. There's something about meeting with somebody, in person is way better, obviously, but something about meeting with somebody on video, they hear your voice, they see your face, they get a little bit more a little bit more of a human connection. There's something about that is good. And that's what you're seeking. Now, looking back, I now have a neighbor up the road she's a staff engineer at Twitch, and I met somebody else in town who works at Google, and there actually are people here that there may not be a tech sector, but there's remote workers who live here in my town even, and quite a few. So since then I've been able to connect with those people, and that's been really awesome too. So I would have emphasized more in-person meeting. And for anybody who's listening, as long as you're comfortable and the other person is comfortable and meeting in a safe space and all that, I think you'll just find you'll get more mileage from that. And so what happens is, I would meet with people and then ask them questions about their job and maybe how they got there, or what's it like to work at Netflix. And then I'm, moving on to the next one and having conversations. And then you'll find that over the weeks and months that people will say, hey, how's your job search going? And there's an opening on my team. I thought you might be interested in applying, and it hasn't been listed yet. It's that's kind of, that's when I realized, okay, this is a really good thing to do. I got to spread the word to other people so they can understand that. Now, people in my coding bootcamp cohort, they did get jobs from cold applications. They did get it. So I'm not saying cold apps don't work, but for me, and I had basically more or less the same cookie cutter resume that everybody does out of a coding bootcamp. In the coding bootcamp, they have a template we work off of. So I didn't think it was my resume. I don't know what it could have been, my location, or who knows what it was. I was not getting any interviews at all from cold apps, to the point where I just stopped doing them at some point, probably around August or so. I was like, this is not working. So what I was doing was all the networking things. At the same time, I was posting videos and trying to make my own coding tutorials that I could post on YouTube, and I could also post them on LinkedIn. And again, that's to like posting text. Awesome. It's good. It's great. And I love writing. It's my favorite thing to do, is actually write. And I didn't know anything about making videos. I just kind of, oh man, it was an adventure. I was just flip my iPhone backwards and just start recording, talking. And start talking about code. And what I found is it's several things. It really forced me, whatever it was that this tutorial today, I'm going to teach this. And I had to really force myself to deeply learn that topic. Yeah. And it was the best teacher for me. So there's to me, it's there's three phases for technical learning. To me, is you can read about something, or you can watch a tutorial, and this is an important phase too, right? Just kind of getting acquainted with things. And then you want to go as quickly as you can to actually building things. Now I'm building things, and you can stop there if that's all you need. But if you want to kick it up one more notch, you can teach, and then it really forces you to learn, because I love that. You feel a responsibility to whomever you're teaching, whether it's at your job or for a local meetup or on the internet. No, you don't want to make a fool of yourself so much as you can, but also you feel a responsibility to give people the correct information. That is a strong motivator to learn something deeply. And so, I would spend a lot of time on these tutorials and learn a little bit more about video production. It was just sort of a nice side effect. And so I was doing that. And I know for a fact that worked. The idea was, and this is, again, coming from my mentor, said he gave me this idea as hey, you want to crank it up a notch, maybe you'll make videos. And again, to make a more human connection, because people, you're teaching other software engineers, or aspiring or maybe even experienced software engineers, but there are also some people in hiring positions that are coming across your videos too. And that's what happened in one case. And I got a job interview for a startup, and the guy who gave me the interview offer, he would definitely watch my videos because he mentioned a few things in the videos. So I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. I interviewed for that job while I was still in the coding bootcamp, I believe. And I ended up not getting an offer from it, but it was a great opportunity, to.
Was this your first interview?
Yeah, this is my first interview.
Okay. What went well? What could you have done better?
So it was like, I think they were just looking for somebody with more experience. And while this one person in the company was able to get me the interview from watching my videos, and he thought he's like, yeah, I think he said something like, there's something about you, or I don't remember what I was like. I just, I'll take a chance here. And, but I think he wasn't on the interview panel, but I think they were looking for somebody with a little more experience. It was one of these interviews. It wasn't like leak code or anything like that. It was more like one of these interviews that went kind of like, I remember they asked me questions like, what do you think about using Postgres in production versus MySQL? Or like things, it was very like that. And just, I got the sense that they were just trying to gauge your level of experience. And I had zero level of experience in production. I've never done anything in production. So
did you tell them that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they pretty much understood that. I understood many of the concepts of the tech itself, but I just lacked the experience that you get from actually doing it at scale, which is something I'm only beginning now. So I'm in my first year, so I'm like 10 months in. So I'm starting to see things now where I'm like, oh yeah, so you learn lessons, and it's only like 10 months. So you can imagine after like 10 years, like you're going to really have a lot of depth of experience.
No, the only reason I asked is going back to Ray Dalio's book that you mentioned. He also has this principle of radical transparency, which I know I've also leaned on that quite a bit. And I've probably been too transparent in some of the interviews that I've done as well, James, for better or for worse. But again, ultimately, I landed up in a spot that I don't regret at all. And so I'm curious. So the first interview didn't go great, but I think Accenture's coming down the pipeline. How did these series of events play out?
Yeah, so I'm just continuing on and doing all these things I mentioned, and like I said, from the networking outreach, and from my community, and from making content, I got at least one interview from all those sources. So I'd figured out that these are things that work. So maybe I'll just keep doing these things until something works. Because I realized at Hack Reactor, and people had told me, you're not going to like one interview, one offer. It could happen. Actually, I had a friend that exactly happened, but it's not typical. Usually you're going to fail maybe one or more, or several interviews. And I looked at each one as like a data point of like, okay, well, sometimes if you can ask for feedback, that's awesome. A lot of times these companies won't give you feedback for legal reasons, unfortunately, but some do though. So through posting on LinkedIn again, I got two job interview offers at the same time. One came through posting on LinkedIn, and the other one came from internally through the Vets Who Code network.
And again, this is all during the period where there are massive layoffs and companies aren't hiring, and you're getting these warm leads just from the content that you're creating.
Yeah, of course it made me a little nervous, but I was so set on accomplishing this. I was like, I know that it's a matter of time. I can't say when, but it's a matter of time before I get it. The job market is not as hot as it was a couple years ago or whatever, but anybody listening to this just know, like, it's just a matter of time. And if you just develop a process, sort of like, you don't have to take my process, but there's elements you can take from it, right? Develop a process and refine it. I had an interview didn't go well, what didn't go well, and you just get more and more data on yourself, right? If you stick to the process, you'll get a job.
No, for sure. And I just love, again, the proactive ownership-laden approach that you are taking with proactively, you're creating content and you are bringing interest to you as opposed to just cold applications. And again, both approaches can work, but again, you've got so much ownership in the approach that you have and you enjoy it. And again, just another takeaway for the audience, maybe you're uncomfortable with that, but at least consider it as a possible vector.
I had purposely not been on social media very much because I have reservations about social media. I'm like, I see like the power of LinkedIn and other platforms as well. Like it's incredible. And I will never leave LinkedIn for that reason. But there's ups and downs to social media in general in terms of its effect on somebody's mental health, as well as we've seen problems related to the health of our democracy as well, and the world. Like, it's not all good and it's not all bad, but for somebody who is looking for an opportunity, somebody like in my shoes, or maybe whoever's listening, maybe that's you, the opportunity to be able to have access to all of these people is just, it's just too good to pass up.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, I had no idea what I was doing and making videos. Like I had no idea what I'm doing. And I just started doing it.
Right. Look at you now, James. So what was it like when you finally got that offer?
Oh, it was great. It was great. I had actually, so the two interviews, the two next interviews I had mentioned, I had been midway through the third company, and I just stopped it mid-process because I was just so ready to start working. So going back, if I had, maybe would have done things different, I probably would have like finished both interviews and then kind of at least seen where, what the offers were. And
Yeah.
I don't mind sharing salary. Most I ever made as an archaeologist was about 60,000 or something like that a year. And it was fine for me because I was a single guy, and you got to understand that for about a decade, and this includes the Marines, I didn't pay rent anywhere,
Right.
I lived out of my car basically in hotels and for a decade. And so it was enough to get by. I never was real concerned about that. But the offer I got was for 115,000. And so I was kind of like trained in this, like, okay, now it's time for salary negotiation. I remember sharing all this with my wife at the time. She was like, no, you take that. She's like, because she was afraid that it would be like, so I was like, I made a deal with it. I was like, okay. Cause I was actually good. I was actually good with one. It's plenty enough for me for my first job. And I said, okay, it's like almost like a game. I like to see how much I was just negotiate up. This is a game. I get more points, I win, right?
Yeah. That's such a hot topic though, to your point.
Yeah.
And I guess I've oscillated back and forth. I didn't negotiate for the position at LinkedIn, and I don't have anything against negotiating for that. But at the same time, I don't know. I was of the mindset, and still largely am, if you made me choose, where if you're trying to break into tech coming from another industry, once you get your foot in the door, and once you have the opportunity to prove yourself, I feel like to an extent you can write your own ticket. If the company that you're working for doesn't eventually take care of you, that's when a bunch of other companies can start to do that and fill that void. So that's my personal take on that. I'm not sure if you agree. I know we're still trying to feel our way through the process.
Sure. Yeah. It's not like they're going to get offended, be like, oh, no, well, we withdraw the offer. That's not really something that happens. But that's, as somebody that doesn't have experience with this like myself, that's sort of what you would think, and probably that was in my wife's thought process as well. And I was just honestly, the other thing was I was just so tired of job searching, because this is like 11 months in, and I was like, well, but I made it though. I mean, like I was like 11 months out of, I was a month short of my goal. It's like, at least I made it, right? And it ended up being, I had to, there's like security clearances involved and everything else with my position. So it ended up having to wait until February to actually start my first day of work, which was also good, because in the middle of we just moved into a new home, and we were building a new house. And so I was actually moving into the new house and finishing, because we probably built 30% of this house ourselves, so we put in for the labor, and I was like still doing the finish work and moving in and closing in the same week that I started the job. So it was a crazy time. It was a good time, so it kind of worked out that way. A good timing there.
And how was the onboarding been? You've been in the role, what is it? It's under a year still?
Yeah. So I love my job. I love it so much. You can probably tell from talking to me. I'm the kind of person that really likes learning new things, and I'm just hopping around just every kind of place. And tech is just the most amazing playground for that. And it's a full stack role I'm working in. So I get to work on the front end, and I get to work, and my first ticket too was working on the back end. I was like, okay, now I need to learn this new, they use Go on the back end. Oh my gosh, that's a new language. I have to learn that, right away. Right? So,
but I feel like you would have a good perspective with that, as opposed to, oh my God, I have to learn something new. I imagine you were like, oh, I get to go learn Go, or here's a reason for me to go do that.
Absolutely. And that's kind of my philosophy. Like I said, I'm like, 9 or 10 months in now. And I love to, now I'm learning Kubernetes, right? So we're doing containerization work and everything. And I was like, that's just brand new to me. I just love that part. And I also know that in the years to come, you can pivot too. Like you want to go into more data science or AI, or there's unlimited amounts of specialization or pivoting you can do, and it's just I love that aspect. And I really love my job, because it's I get to work on a team. It's fully remote. I have a really talented team. There's people with their PhDs in computer science on my team, and there's like very talented engineers, smart people, and the work is interesting and varied. So
I've got to
really
ask,
enjoy it.
to what extent, if any, if you're comfortable disclosing, are you using ChatGPT or any generative AI in your day-to-day workflow to help you? I know I am. I'll go first and say that I absolutely am.
Yeah, so I am a big proponent of AI. For work, it's still a little bit unclear whether we can use generative AI. We're still working. As a company, though, I know Accenture is definitely focused on the client side of things, the customer side of things is focusing on generative AI is a big focus, for the future. So I definitely, in both my side projects and my personal life, I'm using AI, ChatGPT, Claude, the Anthropic's model, and Code Llama, and I'm just trying to get as much experience and exposure to artificial intelligence as I can. And lately through Vetsu Code, we've been meeting with a lot of folks, both from OpenAI and other AI startups that are, it's really good to learn from the AI and the machine learning space. Now at work, I don't write any Python at all, but on my free time, I started writing Python. Absolutely love Python. It's like the most beautiful experience. Yeah, it's just I'd heard people say this before. I didn't really understand how much of a pleasure it is just to write in Python. So so I'm doing that, and sort of in anticipation of, I like these tools a lot. I like AI tools so much. I'm still just getting my feet wet. I'm still first year dev, early career, and I knew like that web applications was going to be my entry point into this industry. But what do I want to do beyond that? Maybe web applications for a long time, or maybe forever, or maybe, pivot into AI or something else. So I'm just sort of exploring, since I do have an interest in that. And AI is so interesting to me because it involves, on a deep level, it involves so many different disciplines like, neuroscience, mathematics, and every kind of discipline is involved in AI. And that is very fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, man, you've got so much runway ahead of you. And I am absolutely, I love talking to you. I can just hear the excitement in your voice, and I feel the same way about the industry writ large. And I know we're coming up on our time, and I want to be respectful of yours. But before you get out of here, I would love to throw you on the hot seat, ask you a few rapid fire questions to better understand your psychology.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first question. What does your typical morning routine look like?
Morning routine. Well, since I am on a remote distributed team, we do have a stand-up every morning, and it's pretty early because I live in Hawaii, so not early for them. But so I wake up at 4:30, depending on day, because we don't observe daylight savings, right? So depending on the time of year, 4:30, wake up, 5 o'clock, stand up, and then after that, it would be breakfast with my wife, and then the work of the day.
Yeah, awesome. If money didn't exist, what do you think you would do every day with your time?
Oh man, I probably would, continue dancing hula and doing things with my hula brothers and sisters and Hawaiian culture. And on the tech side of things, if money didn't exist, I'd probably be studying like the TCP/IP stack and FreeBSD or something like that. I don't know, like just tinkering with my old hobby of tinkering with Unix machines.
Yeah, I think you found your calling, James.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Bitcoin?
Not much. I don't know. Crypto is kind of cool. I had crypto kind of early on, and some Bitcoin early on, and it's just been sitting in a wallet for a while. It's got pretty sizable for a while actually. But I don't do. I prefer regular money.
If you could send a single message to your former self to help you during this transition or the various transitions that you've done, what do you think that message would be?
Yeah, so define your process and iterate. Keep doing what you're doing and believe in yourself.
Beautiful. You need to make a LinkedIn post or video to that.
Right? Yeah.
That's great. Man, this has been amazing. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also go to my website, jpreagan.com. So just reach out to me. I'm here to help.
All right. I'll add links to the show notes. And again, James, I am so glad you came on and shared your story. I love your story so far, and I'm looking forward to watching the chapters continue to be written.
Well, it's a pleasure, James. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thanks for listening. If you got value from today's show, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. It's a free way you can support the show and help other people just like you find the story and others like it. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show on whatever podcast application you use. And most importantly, if you know someone that might be interested in breaking into tech, tell them about the show.